All right, the Saints now are the only team in the NFL without a head coach. I'm not actually 100% certain as I sit here that Dallas has introduced their new head coach, but we understand where things are. The Saints are the only team, honestly, left searching for a head coach. We got news over the weekend that Joe Brady said thanks, but no thanks. We feel like Cliff Kingsbury has echoed that, although we're not 100% certain. Maybe the Saints can make that happen. Kellen Moore's name jumped up into the list. It's been reported that the Saints will fly to Philadelphia to meet with Kellen Moore today. He's got some business to attend to, coincidentally in New Orleans in 2 weeks, but the Saints will talk to the Eagles offensive coordinator before he prepares for the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Certainly Darren Rizzi's name still very much in play. Anthony Weaver's name still in play. Mike Kafka's name still in play. A lot going on. And in the general sentiment over the weekend, when the report was issued that Joe Brady would not come to an interview and that Aaron Glenn did not come interview, and that those are two that have actually spent time in New Orleans and didn't even take the time to try to see what it was about in the Crescent City, everyone said, well, this is a disaster. And I'm not here to tell you that it's not. I don't know enough about those conversations to give a final take on that. Here is what I will say. I don't really care about the process in a coaching search. That applies to the Saints head coach, the Saints offensive coordinator. That applies to LSU's football coach or the women's basketball coach. That applies to any coaching search, period. The process is not all that interesting to me. The result is what's interesting. That sounds obvious, but a better way to say it is I'm not that concerned with the optics, because I've seen really, really poorly run coaching searches from the outside yield a positive result, and I've seen buttoned-up operations absolutely whiff. You can go across all sports for that. I'm not that interested in it. Yes, I will sit here right now on this Monday and say, it doesn't look great for New Orleans. But at the same time, that doesn't mean they can't get the right head coach. Here's a fact. Whoever gets this job, it's going to be a tough one. And that is the position that New Orleans put itself in because of a few years of mismanagement. This was going to be a difficult job for Mike McCarthy, for Darren Rizzi, for Aaron Glenn. This would be a difficult job for Andy Reid. Are we in agreement that Andy Reid's the best coach in the NFL right now? And pick your name. You want to talk about Sean McVay? You want to do Kyle Shanahan? You want to go with Mike Tomlin? You want to go with Andy Reid? I don't really care who you go with. Whoever you brought in to run this operation for the next 2 years, it's going to be really difficult. And that has put you in a difficult spot as far as hiring a coach. I don't think that is a difficult thing to reason. What I would suggest, though, is that let's just see what the result is. That's more interesting than me. It would be easy for me to sit here and play talking head and rant and rave and go nuts about how the organization is in the dumpster and Loomis is a disaster and the Saints look like fools and they're the laughingstock of the NFL, and I could go on, and that'd probably be a great radio segment. But the fact of the matter is that I don't feel that way. I feel like it's a hard job. I feel like the Saints are not rushing to anything. I feel like they have some candidates on the table. They need to talk to everybody and try to make the best decision they can for the future of the organization. And I'm not here to just sit here and cast aspersions or laugh and point. It's just, that's not the way that I'm wired, and that's not the way I think about this. I think the Saints head coaching job is a tough job. I think the optics are not very good after this weekend. I don't think that means that the franchise is doomed for the next decade. They've got to figure out who's got the chops to come into a locker room that's aging, that's got expensive players, that's going to have to go through probably one more really tough season, and then start to see the light on the other side, and you've got to find the guy who's capable of emerging on the other side of it. That's what you're looking for. Now, hopefully, and we'll never know this because Mickey Loomis is not going to say anything in a press conference. What he does say on the record doesn't reflect this. What we have to hope is that the Saints do understand that they're in a tough spot, and they do understand they need a certain personality type to come in, take some lumps early, and try to get this thing up off the ground. It's a comparison we have made far too often, but it just makes too much sense not to compare it to what Detroit has done over the last 3 seasons. Remember, Dan Campbell got off to a terrible start, but it's easy now to look back and say that's a guy who's okay with that. because he's going to connect with the players, because he's going to be a positive influence, because he's going to do and say all the right things. And then you got to trust him to put the right guys around. And then you've got to trust the organization to continue to draft properly and to use the money properly in free agency. And it turned around. Houston's done the same thing. They were cycling through coaches every 12 months over there in Houston. And they weren't winning any games, but they've hit on draft picks. And they got the right coach in there who instilled the right mindset in the organization, and they're starting to see the other side of it. It's not a quick fix. This is not going to be a 5-win team to a 14-win team because you got the right guy next year. This is going to be a process, and that's what you have to understand if you're the Saints here. So does it look great right now that they don't have a coach? No. Is it the end of the world? It's not. Who's to say Joe Brady was ready for this? Who's to say Mike McCarthy, who's been a perennial playoff coach for the last 15 years, is ready to come in and take some lumps? Who's to say Kellen Moore can't do it? Who's to say Anthony Weaver's not the right guy to be what Dan Campbell was in Detroit? Right now, I'm not. So I feel like while this is a very, very soft take, a cool take, if you will, I feel like everybody else is jumping on the sizzling hot take, so I'm actually kind of zigging when everyone zags. Just let's see how it works. Let's see what the result is. The process doesn't look great, but that's not the most important thing. So we'll see what happens when the Saints meet with Kellen Moore. He's going to be a little bit busy. You got a little bit more flexibility with Mike McCarthy, who's out of a job, with Anthony Weaver, whose team's been done for a month. You got time with Mike Kafka. There's a report out there that he wants to bring Wink Martindale, and all that is important. Before I jump down the Saints' throat or go nuts about what's going on right now, let's just be patient. I talked to you on Friday, and I said the Saints are in a pretty good spot because everybody else is kind of butting theirs up. The Saints' prime candidates have only been whittled down by one. That's Aaron Glenn. Okay, let's see. There are no sure things in a coaching hire. And candidly, most of them don't work. Most head coaching hires in the NFL don't work. It's very rare to have a coach that sticks for 8-10 years, is a perennial playoff team, wins a Super Bowl. That doesn't happen very often. Mike Tomlin's the outlier. Sean McVay right now is the outlier. Andy Reid's very much the outlier. Fact is that most of the time, you cycle through another one in 3 or 4 years. And it feels like if you're betting, that's where the Saints will be because of the state of the organization. But you've got to try to find that next guy. And you don't have to rush to it because everybody on the internet says that you're striking out. That's kind of where you are. And so we'll let this play out. I told you last week, I thought if the Saints made a head coaching hire last week, it would be Aaron Glenn. If they did not, it would be Joe Brady. Feels like that's wrong. Now, I'll give you my Monday statement for Friday's week. I think the Saints will have a head coach by Friday. I think they're going to interview 4 or 5 guys this week. I think during that interview process, they'll understand where they are and who that one is going to be. And I think by Friday, you got somebody at the podium. That's my guess. And I'll react accordingly. If all the guys on this list turn the Saints down, okay, we can start to ease towards that panic button. But just because Joe Brady said I'm good coaching Josh Allen doesn't mean the Saints organization is doomed for half a decade. We'll see. Hey, it's Hunt. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.